our second installment of what we're unofficially calling COVID conversations, for lack of a better term. But let's back up here for a second, because if you don't know what a Mad Nighter is, then you're not exactly 100% sure of why you're here and listening to this video or watching this video in the first place. So really quickly, Mad Nights started about 7 years ago, maybe 8 now, as a small meetup conversation that was happening in Kelowna, British Columbia, Canada, where some passionate marketers and designers wanted to get together and share stories, things that they were excited about, things that they were working on, case studies, that sort of thing, and lessons that they were learning in their process of becoming better at their craft and growing their businesses. More recently, we've been moving this conversation and trying to grow it and the lessons learned across Canada and throughout North America through a podcast. But there are a few key conversations we've had over the past couple of months that we've wanted to release here on video as well. And one of these conversations, which we're going to get to shortly, is with Shane Austin, which I'll talk to you about in a few short minutes. But first, a few housekeeping items. I want to send out a special thanks to some key individuals and companies that have really helped Mad Nights over the past few years. First of all, I want to send a shout out to Chris Arledge, who is a local designer here in Kelowna, BC. You can learn more about him at chrisarledge.com. He's created the Mad Nights logo and some of the graphics that we use, with the stuff that we distribute and work that we do. So I want to thank him for everything that he's done. I also want to give a shout out to Graham Marshall, gmrcreatives.com, who helped us with some of the audio, music, and effects that you'll see throughout this and our stuff on our podcast. And of course, none of these episodes, none of this work that we do would be possible without the work from Cheeky Monkey Media and their support that they provide for me personally and for Mad Nights. And such a great fit. Of course, I work for them, but they're a great partner in what we're doing here with their work for agencies and other creatives in our industry, and then with their work for their end clients as well. And you can learn more about them at cheekymonkeymedia.ca. Now let's get into what we're going to be talking about today. So I'm going to have we're going to lead into a very special conversation with a really close, good personal friend of mine by the name of Shane Austin. And he's not only a community builder, a business leader, and for me a personal mentor. He's just a kind, loving, spiritual individual, incredibly creative. And when I was going through struggles during this time with the work that I do, he was just a great person to kind of speak with and really kind of remind me of what's important for what I need to do for myself in order to do what I need to do for the company that I work for, and the creatives that work for that company that I'm trying to keep busy and put food on their table and support their families, going forward in what's been a pretty challenging time over the past few months. Shane has been he's been a designer, he's been a design thinker, he's been a community builder, he's been and more recently he has spearheaded an initiative and a business for himself called the Okanagan coLab here in Kelowna, British Columbia, Canada. I mean, it's grown tremendously despite everything and all the challenges that he's gone through just on a business level and with our current economic situation. And it's really a testament to who he is and how he treats people and how he does business and how he creates community with everything that he does. I hope he's not embarrassed. I hope I'm not laying it on too thick, but I just really, really appreciate him. I appreciate his friendship and the conversation that we get into here is not only like it's really helpful if you're in the freelance space. If you're a marketer or designer out there on your own, freelancing, there's a lot of context within this conversation that would be really helpful for you. But as us as individuals working for other agencies as well, there's some really good information in this conversation for you as well. So I hope you'll stay tuned and give it a listen. And without any further ado, let's have a conversation with Shane. Thank you. So did you bring a tasty beverage for this conversation?
Oh yeah, I'm on it.
Cheers.
This, English bitter.
Nice. Cheers. So, first of all, thank you for having this quick conversation with me and telling me what you're up to.
Well, I don't know if we're going to go that far. I mean,
well, don't tell me everything. But let's start with the document that Christine shared on the weekend.
Which document in particular?
This was it was almost like you going through a thought process with some advisors on how you could bring benefits to solopreneurs and small businesses. There was a couple of action items I think that came out of it. One was you were going to be writing a letter to our politicians, and then there was perhaps a group that was going to be formed where people could talk about their challenges, and the group can help talk about possible solutions, just as sort of a collaborative kind of experience to problem solving for some of the challenges these small businesses, local businesses are going to be going through with this COVID-19 issue.
That's a pretty accurate summary, actually.
Thank you, considering I just reviewed it before we got on this call.
Okay, well, I'll give you a tiny bit of background on that particular process. We run a regular event called Think Tank Thursdays at coLab.
Okay.
And the basic idea of it is that a presenter can come in and showcase a challenge that they're facing as a business, and provide a lot of the background and the data and some of the specific asks as far as help that they might need. And then being in a room surrounded by experts, they're not just getting opinions on things, but they're able to really more closely examine the challenge. And often they will reframe it. They'll kind of see it in a different light than they did before through that process of deeper inquiry. Mm-hmm. And usually further towards the end of that process, people are able to give more informed suggestions as to what process or steps they would need to go through to be able to solve that problem, or kind of use anecdotes and stories from their experience as far as
Powerful.
experience they maybe had solving the problem.
Yep.
And then towards the end of the process, they'll commit to going through a project. And usually it has to be a really specific project with a short list of action items and goals and a clear kind of statement of success. And also that person will pair up with a couple of other people as accountability partners. So Think Tank Thursday is a process that we use on a very regular basis, and we've done it with dozens of people over the last year or so.
Mm-hmm.
And so I volunteered myself, being that I had, really seen that this is a big challenge for very small businesses and solo businesses in the community.
Mm-hmm.
And so I presented the how do I question of the need to create a type of strategy or process that business owners could use to be able to navigate through the crisis. And it was tricky because strategy isn't a thing it's not a one size fits all sort of thing.
Mm-hmm.
So I think a lot of people called me out on that pretty quickly. And I think we narrowed in further on that it was really more like, instead of a strategy, it would be more like a support system that might source some type of strategic thinking, some tools, some tips, and a lot of information that businesses could use. And ultimately the project, was composed of that support system, but then I built on top of that to see it as there could be sort of a content channel.
Mm-hmm.
There could be a network. There could be a building or accumulation of resources, and then most definitely some advocacy on behalf of the group. So that's kind of really was the immediate next step for me after this Think Tank Thursday was to start on advocacy, because I think advocacy isn't just going out to legislators and asking for help. It's like approaching all the leaders, business leaders and civic leaders to let them know and recognize that there is a really serious problem going on, challenges going on in the small business community, and to bring it to their attention and to potentially pool or access other information and resources that were becoming available really quickly. So I noticed that pretty fast right off the bat after distributing this letter, is how many organizations were poised and ready to help.
So the letter has got the first part, the advocacy part has been completed. The letter has gone out.
Yeah, I probably sent it to about 20 or 30 different organizations and different leaders.
And you've received responses?
Yeah, I mean, quite a lot of responses very quickly.
Great.
Sometimes within a matter of a couple of hours, I got responses.
Wow, that's awesome.
So I had Robert Fine, who does entrepreneurship and business for the city.
Mm-hmm.
He's responded and called numerous times.
Awesome.
Krista from the EDC, so at Economic Development, they've noted and sort of championed some of our suggestions, and internally have been discussing some of that. Larry Whitmer from Community Futures, Bree from AO, Ragwa from Innovate BC. Got two responses from Tracy Gray, who's our
MP.
Yeah. So, and the list goes on. There's
awesome.
Lots of really good examples. So the advocacy, I think, was a really good starting point for me, because it meant that we were kind of extending ourselves into the right conversations really quickly.
Nice.
So it was nice to see that there's so much support readily available, although they didn't all have answers and they didn't all have solutions. It means we're part of those conversations, and the points that were made in the letter were extended to all those different forums. I mean, even Tracy, it's like she was obviously accumulating quite a lot of information and data for her to bring in and present in sessions of Parliament. So
Wow.
hopefully our little voices were heard there.
Well,
But
it
really,
sounds like,
it's the beginning. Like that's
yeah,
just the beginning.
and a
I'm only
willingness, a willingness to support and solve some of the challenges that small businesses, solopreneurs are facing.
Yeah, I think it's like I knew that right from the get-go that we would have to be listening a lot and participating in the right conversations, like asking good questions and listening, being empathetic.
Yeah.
So it's a skill that I really had to exercise quite a lot because I think I have my own perspective, my own problems. And I mean, I've been
Yeah.
a freelancer and a solo business owner, and more recently in the last year, hiring and growing a small team. So it's kind of like I've gone through the different stages of the life cycle,
Mm-hmm.
and I just didn't want that to be the only way that I form my perspective.
Right.
I think I needed to listen a lot more. And it's amazing to me how much variance there is. I mean, you couldn't take two small business owners or two solo business owners from Kelowna and expect to sit them down and have similar opinions.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of diversity in that.
Mm-hmm.
And even since then, I mean, daily basis, we're meeting for different types of online meetups and whatnot to continue the discussion. So I keep learning new things each day.
Nice. All focused around trying to be part of the solution to solving some of the challenges that or at least be a support mechanism for solopreneurs and small business owners, at least locally, right?
Yeah, I'm doing my best to do that.
Yeah, for sure.
I have a
So,
lot of guilt. Just like I never feel like there's enough being done.
oh yeah, well, you shouldn't feel that way. So sort of pulling from your experience, you mentioned you've been a freelancer, you've been a solopreneur, and now you're doing some hiring and stuff like that. You work with solopreneurs and freelancers every day through the coLab experience and the co-working experience. What I've been asking and the conversations I've been asking, you know, um, larger agencies, smaller agencies, other businesses, particularly businesses that were hit hard in the 2008, 2009 recession. I've been asking them like what advice that they had coming out of those experiences, and I think sort of understanding our relationship. You were, and knowing you for as long as I've known you, you were a freelancer post and solopreneur post 2007, 2008, right? You were working for an agency at that time. Were you back in Edmonton?
Before and after, I did my first freelancing gig pretty much right out of school, and I was teaching at the time, so this would have been early, like 2000, 2001. Then I got employed for probably about 8 years. So just before I moved here to Kelowna, which would have been 2008, is when I started my very, very small firm.
Yeah.
And, I would say I was a freelancer earlier on. I don't know if I really freelanced as much as I was a solopreneur. Like I actually hire a lot of other people at that time. And that's the business that I brought here to Kelowna in 2009.
Right. So, and so you were starting that business sort of coming out of the 2008 financial crisis, and now going through this and seeing some of the members of the coLab and what they're going through. I'm just wondering if there is there things that you're looking at? Is there things that they're looking at? Is there conversations that you've been having where that there's some lessons that are being learned out of this? Is there some things that people are looking at in order to protect themselves, mitigate risk, and position themselves to be better coming out of this? are you having any of those kinds of conversations, or do you have any thoughts on that kind of stuff?
Yeah, I mean, there's similarities and differences from the 2008 crash and really the environment that you're seeing now. I mean, I think there's certainly is quite a horrifying economic impact
Mm-hmm.
that is shared between the two.
Yeah.
And we're obviously seeing businesses closing and a lot of people suffering from lower income and so on. But I think the really stark difference in this particular crisis is the mental health risks that are imposed on people because this sort of really dark, you know, apocalyptic sort of like shroud around the story of COVID-19. And I think also the fact that a lot of people are being forced to stay at home and work from home, whereas in 2008, I mean, none of those things were really a factor. I mean, you'd be pretty bummed that your income was lower, maybe you lost a job or what have you, but there's so much more, a deeper emotional impact that's going on right now that's really dragging people down and not allowing them to get out.
Mm-hmm.
And I think, I mean, what I'm seeing is a theme in the conversations over the last couple of weeks is that you really have to focus on self-care during this time, being close to the people that matter to you, being very vulnerable and open about what's going on for you emotionally, and staying connected all the time. And community has never been more important through any crisis really that I've seen in my lifetime, because people are feeling so disconnected, you know, even with internet technology to allow them to video call in. They're spending a lot of time ruminating and despairing on their own. So I think that's the thing I'm seeing is a really remarkable and terrifying difference, and it's huge in the conversations that we're having, is how dark it is for a lot of people, and that they're finding more light by spending more time taking care of themselves, staying close to people that they love, focusing on work that they're passionate about, staying close to their purpose, over and over and over. I mean, like every day. And it's great. It's really, it's heartwarming to see that people are really opening up to each other. It does not negate the fact, though, however, that you have to navigate through this financial crisis and continue to bring in income, to continue to build your business, continue to keep your costs low so you can, weather the storm.
But you can't really do that from unless you're in a good place, right? Like it's a
lot harder, man. A hell of a lot harder.
Yeah, I mean, you know what I do? I'm not just trying to feed my family. I'm trying to feed the other 15, 20 other people that the Cheeky Monkey employs. And I'm telling you, being home alone right now. Rick, our CEO, he's a resource, and we chat in the mornings, and there's positivity in those conversations. But there are a number of days today where I literally felt like all of these thoughts start swirling around in my mind, all of these what if scenarios, and literally it felt like my eyes were wide open, but it was just getting dark. It was just getting dark. Like it was, so it's the trying to shake that stuff off, go for a walk, go for a run, see something beautiful, get a reset, and try and do something, and make a difference is sort of key for me right now. And
I think what you're experiencing is just the sheer overwhelm and the overload, both at sort of the severity of the situation, and a lot of other people are really getting information overload because the place, they go on social media to relax or to kind of zone out, watching videos of puppies and kittens and whatnot, but all throughout that's, peppered through it are nothing but dark, horrific stories. And I think a lot of the thing that sort of candy that they've been consuming is actually making them sick. because they're so used to consuming that information on a day-to-day basis, or they're getting it secondhand through their friends and their networks. So I think that information exposure is a very unhealthy effect that people are trying to counter now by going outside, getting their exercise, spending more time around loved ones. I mean, maybe there's going to be a really stark realization of how addicted they were to information and how that's imposing on their mental health now when they need to be really caring for it.
So, I mean, you watch it in the news, you see it on social media. I mean, I can barely look at Facebook these days. I had trouble watching the news prior to this happening. In some of the excuse me, in some of the ideas that you're sort of mulling around and exploring, and trying to bring people together to have these conversations, yet we're kind of remote. Are you thinking about doing these kinds of things through tools like social media, or are you thinking about getting off of social media and doing something different and connecting people in a different way remotely?
I mean, I think only the people who are trying to affect can really inform us on whether we're using the right tool or not. But I really prefer to to keep it lean and to use bespoke technologies, to leverage channels that people already are aware of. So the adoption curve is much shorter. And I think that social media obviously is one of the types of tools and channels that you could use, but there are many others. I mean, we could be using document management on Google Docs. We could be creating a really simple forum using Discourse. We could be using newsletters. So it's like, always think about who your audiences are and what your goals are and what sort of their need is, and you kind of decide how you engage from there. But again, what is the part of this that we start with? I think if we started with advocacy, we're going to pool our information resources and share them, quite a lot through our networks. And then if we were to develop a tool or utilize a platform, we'd go the lean and mean way and just really try to build on stuff that's already readily available. And I'm already seeing, numerous different cities and regions that are building COVID crisis types of websites and web resources. So, we don't want to actually recreate the wheel here.
No.
We're just trying to help people.
Yep. Yeah. No, that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
So if we think about freelancers, and we think about working in the sort of creative marketing and design space, and or even solopreneurs, is there something that we haven't talked about, or a question that I haven't asked that you'd like them to be thinking about in a time like this, whether it's regards to their business or to their personal health, or to what they're doing? Is there something you want them to think about, or you want to leave with them?
I mean, there's so many different types of personalities in there, and I wouldn't want to blanket creative professionals or freelancers or solopreneurs with the same sort of inducement of needs or what have you. But I think, what I'm hearing a lot of is like, have you really checked in with yourself to get a sense of what's going on? That vicious narrative that's kind of stuck in your brain.
Mm-hmm.
And for some people, this could be a really great opportunity for growth and learning and self-understanding and self-compassion that they never really had before because they're too busy hustling.
Yeah.
And I think for a few years I've been seeing a lot of people kind of caught up in that hustle mentality and just sort of building the business, networking, gathering resources, and just in this endless exhausting loop, and not necessarily as attached to just general wellness or we're kind of understanding the purpose for what they're doing. So this might be a good time to really revisit their values and to get a sense of like, if they're stepping ahead and they're going to choose, any change in the path, that they're doing it for the right reasons and not just reacting because of fear or anxiety or somebody else's opinion on what's going on. So this could be a really good, conscious, healthy point in their lives, kind of forced on them really,
Mm-hmm.
to be able to think about like why they're doing what they're doing. And I think a lot of freelancers and such, I mean, they do it because they want that independence and they want control of what they're doing, and they want to, kind of build something that they can be proud of, and that's great. That doesn't have to change, but maybe the what and the how might change really due to the environment now, really imposing some new rules to the game.
There are
So
so
I don't know if
many
that's
of
an
us.
answer to your question or not.
No,
Is that an
actually,
answer? I don't know.
it does. So I had an earlier conversation, but it was funny, like the way he's looking at it from a business point of view. He essentially almost said the exact same thing, but it just framed it slightly different. In that sometimes in business we're reacting to things. People are saying, maybe there is a core competency, a reason you started your business, whether you're excuse me, whether you're a solopreneur or a freelancer or something like that. Maybe you wanted to focus on something, but because we follow the dollar a little bit, somebody says, oh, why don't you help me with this? And you go off into this direction, and then you ask yourself, well, is that something that I should be doing? And then so pretty soon you're doing 3 or 4 different things, and you don't know what your focus is anymore. And so his comment was, take a look at the books, take a look at what's working, take a look at what's not working, and shave off the fat, shave off stuff that that's unnecessary. Find your focus. And you were saying that from a you were saying essentially the same thing, but almost like from an emotional and mental health point of view. Like there are things we do in our job every day that we don't enjoy doing, and
They're connected.
yeah,
The logical and the emotional,
absolutely.
and I mean, some people are pushed, from one way first over the other. I
Mm-hmm.
think it's like really, once you sort of understood, you can see what's at play. You're kind of more conscious, aware of that. I think you can work with it. And there's a real opportunity for a creative and playful and exploratory sort of development process out of that. But if you
Yes.
get too caught in it and you're fearful and you're kind of tied down, there's no creativity. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
fear will stamp that out, it'll stifle it right away. But we're at a point, I think, now, not just as individuals and companies and organizations, but humanity as a whole, where we could really recognizing what's in front of us to be more creative and to be more innovative than we ever have been. I mean, creativity loves constraints. So if you know what your constraints are, then you can design around constraints.
Yes.
But you can't do that if you're feeling reactive and fearful.
Mm-hmm.
So I think the internal check is really important. And I think depending on your personality type, looking at the books,
Mm-hmm.
looking at your goals, really kind of laying out the planning, that could be one approach. For other
Yep.
people, it might be more soul searching
Mm-hmm.
and, really acknowledging your values. I
What
think it's both,
truly
to be
makes me
honest.
happy, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
you need them
Yeah.
both.
Yes. Yeah. No, makes sense. Um, well, I, I don't want to take up too much of your time. I thought that was a great conversation, and yeah, with your permission, I'd like to share it around.
I mean, this is a very important time. And I think that the unexpected nature of it is where we're going to really see true awakening through the process. So I really encourage people to start to engage and get into those conversations and to be in communities
Yes.
that can help sort of co-develop. And there's a ton of support out there. Nobody should ever feel alone.
Yeah.
So, you or I, or just reaching out any channel in the community, you'd be surprised at how many other people are there and ready to support, support and provide that help.
And for anything that comes out of what you're planning, if you see me being a fit for helping out with any of that kind of stuff, just let me know.
That I'll wrangle you in, Dennis. I always do. I always do.
You
Just
absolutely
asking,
influence
how are
it.
you doing? How
Absolutely.
things going? You want to have a coffee? You want to have a chat? Like,
Yeah.
5 minutes of your time, your ear for someone else can just make a world of difference.
So important. Or a beer.
Always beer, man. Always beer.
All right, sir. I won't take up any more of your time. Go and enjoy your evening with your family. I'll do the same. And let's do this again.
All right, buddy.
All right, man.
High fives, virtual hugs.
Yeah, I wish I could see you in person, man. Still not the same.
Soon enough.
All right. Take it
Cheers,
easy, eh?
buddy.
All right.
Have a good night.
Yeah, you too. Bye.